Let's continue here with our animated picture-in-picture technique. But what we're going to take a look at is using oval shapes. But we're going to keep those oval shapes based on 3:2 vertical or portrait format images. We can create oval shapes in an image editor like Photoshop or Photoshop Elements, of course. But we can also do so in Pictures-to-Exe, but we need to use masks to achieve that. One of the problems we have presenting images in an oval mask or within an oval shape is the content of the image itself. We have to be pretty careful which images we choose. Now, I tend to fill the screen pretty well with the content in my images, as you can see from these images above. So if I were to take this image, for example, if you could imagine putting an oval shape over the top of that, you're going to lose parts of the animal, and some of the parts are pretty important to be included, i.e. the beak. Here's another one that's not going to lend itself very well to an oval shape. So irrespective of the techniques of Photoshop or Elements, we do need to choose the images carefully. Just for speed, I'll stay with my balloons, which will probably look reasonably okay in an oval shape. One of the other issues I have from a presentation point of view is I cannot apply a nice thin black or white line around the edge of an oval when I'm creating it within Pictures-to-Exe using masks. So we have a little bit more of a difficulty in making sure the oval shapes stand out from the background. Once we've created our oval shapes, whether we choose to use just one in a presentation like this, maybe placing an oval in the middle, or two, placing one on the left and one on the right, it doesn't really matter in relation to the animation we put into those images. What we demonstrated in the previous video can be applied to the ovals. Just before we begin to make our oval shapes, what I have on screen here is a standard triptych 3:3:2 image slide style. Now, as you've already seen in the previous video, slide styles can be used to put quite complex animation into a set of images. But we can also use a slide style like this, which I've included with your download to help us out sometimes. For example, let me just remove that. I'm going to go to my slide styles here, and this is the one that I am going to include with the ones already included from the previous video. You can see by the option over here, all we need is 3 images, 1, 2, 3. So all we need to select is 3:3:2 images. So what we could do is keep this as a jumping off point, a preset. We can apply the triptych static to save a lot of time. Let me explain. Let me select these 3. Let's select this one, and this one, and drag it down between the blanks. Let's apply the static triptych shape, open this up in the Objects and Animation screen, and we're 60% of the way there with just a couple of clicks. Even though we don't want a static option here, at least we've got something to start with. Now remember, we can alter the running order of these pretty easily, because in that slide style we saw that they came up 1, 2, 3. So if I wanted this one in the center, then all I've got to do is select, let's say, that one first, that one in the center, and then that one. And when I select all 3 of those and apply my slide style, then my red balloon is in the center. So we've got options even before we start to think about animation and oval shapes. So let's think about putting an oval shape in the center here. I need to identify it, so I need to make sure I've got the center image selected, and I think what I'll do here, I'll simply delete it, because that's what we're going to fill with a nice oval shape. And what we could do with the others is, just to make things a little bit easier for ourselves, we could call this one left, this one right, and the other one is being used to create the background, and we can just leave that. You can see the big background and it's been made soft. There's the opacity been dropped to about 40 and the blur somewhere around 30. So that background makes the images stand out nice and proud. So what we need to do then is to create a mask. So let's start by clicking into the grey area and selecting our mask. We're going to add a mask template. Now it comes up by default with a soft edge, that circle. I'm going to click this option and sharpen it up because we want it to match these two images. I'm going to click OK and it's going to appear in the center of the screen. So looking at our mask just for a moment, over on the right hand side, it's made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to add an image, so it's made up of 5 parts. But the important parts for us at the moment is the mask circle, that's the shape you're seeing here, and if you could physically see this, everything around this edge would be black, this area would be white. And the other part that we're interested in is the mask content. So what we need to do in the mask content is to place the image we just deleted from the center. Not going to fit that circle too well, but we'll adjust the circle in a moment. So I can right click, add an image, and I can pick up the image in question, which was BD001. You can see the issue we have, but we can ignore that for a moment. What we need to do is to adjust the mask circle. So select it first. We also need to affect its zoom, but I want to take away the chain link here because if we affect the zoom of an image, then the height and the width remains in register, and I need to break them to create the oval shape. So I just need to click it and you'll see the chain link appears to be broken. So now I can click and drag the X and I can take the Y down as well, and within a short time we've got our oval shape. So let's run through this again. We've got a mask stencil, and this is in fact the mask stencil, so we could even tuck that away once we've done with it. We've got the mask content, which is always going to be our image or a video, and we can tuck that away as well. But we've also got the mask container. The mask container, you can think of that, I think, a little bit like a frame. An invisible hand or container that you can use to animate the oval shape in the center. So from this point we can treat the mask container 1 as our center image, couldn't we? Because it's going to take, or has taken, the place of the center 3:2 oblong image. Now the only problem, as I explained a little earlier, is that we don't have the opportunity here. Let's open this up so we can see all the parts of this. We don't have the opportunity here to put a nice thin line around the oval to match what we've got around here. If I select the image, for example, and I go to my border and click it, well, if I make this very, very thick, you can see what it does. It tries to put the border around the square edges, which of course is not doing us any favours at all when we've got an oval shape. When we go to the mask, we can put a border on that too, but that border then just becomes a part of the mask, and you can see it reveals parts of the image. Maybe we could use that in a creative way at some stage, but it's not what I really need or require here. Now if you wanted to create your animation with 3 ovals, how would we do that? Well, I would probably get rid of my left and right, and I would just close this up for a moment because I can make a copy of that to save me recreating the whole thing, and to make sure all 3 ovals are the same shape. Then what I could do is highlight the center, hit Ctrl+C. I think we can right click and do a copy if you want. Click into the white area here to make sure nothing is selected, otherwise we'd end up pasting a mask within a mask. We don't want that. So right click and paste. So now we've got a second mask. Let's select it, and before we forget, let's call this left. And of course, as soon as we create it, we need to select the mask circle, or even the mask. Let's select the mask first, because we need to move the mask to the left. And we need to position that nicely. I'll use my down arrow with the cursor there. That looks about right. But of course, it's obvious what we need to do, and that's to change the image. But that's quick and easy via Properties, Picture, and we can pick up another of the images. So it's quite a nice quick way of creating 3 oval shapes. Now I can do the same again. Right click, copy, click into the white area to lose all of the selections, right click, paste. What I could do is drop that down using the Control and the page down key, right the way down to the bottom, change that one to right, so we can easily identify it. And before we do anything else, if the left one was -65, then this one really should be 65. But of course it does leave us the need to switch the picture to the last of those balloons. So Properties, Picture, click the down arrow and locate it. There's our 3 ovals. And of course, to animate those, we animate the outer mask shape or frame. Now I had a bit of a senior moment there, almost forgetting what to call the part of the mask that controls everything, but of course it's a container. So what we're going to do here is to select all 3 containers, and what we need to do is to create 3 keyframes, one for each of the center, left and right, so we can create a little animation. So I'm going to click into the top one, and I'll use the insert key into the left hand side and insert, and into the right and insert. Then I can select all 3 of those, and we'll give them 5 seconds to do whatever it is we want them to do. Of course, that's not cast in stone, we can always make a change. And I think we'll start with the image on the left, so we need to identify the keyframe where we need to move this image to start the process. Now we've covered this technique before, so let's keep this fairly simple and move a bit quicker perhaps. I can just drag that picture using the X pan just to move it off the screen. Maybe I could use a little bit of a 3D shape, but if I'm going to affect the zoom at all, I do need to make sure we reconnect this chain link. If the chain link is not linked up, then when I start to address the zoom, it may affect the shape of the oval. So if I wanted to zoom down a bit and bring it back to that sort of point, if I press play, you may be surprised that nothing is going to happen. Now I should have a little quiz here to see how many people can pin down what's actually gone wrong there. Well, nothing's gone wrong at all. When I applied the second keyframe, I inserted it, and when we insert the keyframe, they're not turned on. So if I want that keyframe to take part in the animation, I have to reset that or turn it back on. So I have to take it back to its original there. I have to hit the rotate, and I have to hit the pan. So now we see what the animation does. And of course we would need to put some speed in there. To be honest, I think that's rather slow. So maybe, after looking at that, I may wish to bring this back a second. Let's go to the right hand one this time, and we'll do something different. We won't make them a mirror image of one another. We'll do something a little different. We'll still have it coming off that side, but maybe we'll rotate it Y, but a slightly different way, even maybe a little bit of X. All this is trial and error, because we're never really sure how it's going to look until we press the button and view it. But of course, if we have inserted keyframes, we will need to turn those on that we've used. So let's get a feel for that, because we've just reduced the length by a second from 5 to 4. And there you can see those two coming into play. Might be a good idea, before we go too much further, to apply the speed here. Remember, we're starting with images off screen here, so I'm going to start them faster and have them slow down. So let's go to the pan, animation, slow down, but we've also got some zoom in there, so we've got to apply that too, and we've also got some rotate in there, so we've got to do that too. And then of course we've got to do the same thing with the right keyframe. Now I can't overestimate the value of the speed here. The speed makes an enormous difference to the animation we create. Let's close this just for a moment, and we'll just put a picture maybe that side, so we can just get a feel for how this looks by pressing play and viewing this in the mini player. Doesn't look too bad. Now we've got to make some choices here, because we need to decide, as before, how long each of these are on screen. Let's just put in here 12 seconds and we'll see how we go. Let's go back to the objects and animation screen, because of course we'd need to do something with our center oval. Well, I'm going to see if I can slide it in from the bottom. Perhaps I'll select the keyframe, and let's identify the right one for a start. I'm going to drop the size of this down so you can see what I'm going to do. Let's go down with this. Let's use some rotate X, and we could even, with the chain link linked up nicely, we may even make this even bigger. And of course we would need to do the same as we did before. Slow down for any of the animation options you've used. And while you're rattling through all these, even if you hadn't used the zoom, sometimes it's a good idea to apply it anyway, because if you've not applied any zoom, no damage done, but if you change your mind a little later, then you've already got the speed attached. So here we are back into the slide list, so I can do a little preview in the mini player. It's important to see what we've done with the preceding image, so we can see the fade on, and I think that looked pretty good. Let's take another quick look at that. Just jump back and look at it again. That's not too bad at all. Now, coming back into the objects and animation screen, I just want to remind you that although I've sort of almost standardized on the three images all coming to a rest at the same point, of course we don't need to do that. With the keyframes at our disposal, we could stagger these and see just how that looks. So we could have the center one coming in just slightly later. So if we put that around 5 seconds, just a simple change, that what it does, it just keeps that center one moving just a little bit longer than the other two. It's just a variation on a theme. Let's try another second and have another look. And again, it's confirmation really of what I said earlier on, that when we start thinking about picture-in-picture techniques and animation, we open up enormous possibilities, dozens of different ways we can apply similar techniques. Now, to bring this to a close, let me put that back. What I'm going to do is suggest that, well, we could still do the same with this group of masks which we did before. If we wanted to have these images to sit on screen, let's say for another 4 seconds, and all leave the screen together, then we need something to control all three of the masks. And the easiest way to do that, the only way to do that, is to add a frame. Now I can do that by right-clicking and adding a frame, or I can go to the top left to pick it up. I can then select the three masks, right-click and cut them, and paste them into the frame. So now my frame, when I look at the keyframe of that, what we did before is we put that keyframe, if I can drag it, somewhere around about here, somewhere around 8 seconds. Let me put the keyframe time in. And then from that point to when the image leaves the screen, let's add another keyframe at the end. So we've got 4 seconds to decide what we want to do. But now we're controlling the frame. So that's going to take all 3 parts of our mask and our ovals with it. So I think you know by now there's almost no end to what you could do. Let's just keep it simple. Whoops, picked the wrong thing up. Let's keep it simple, I was about to say, and just move it off the screen to the right. One last look to bring this to a close, and I'll just put an image the other side and play. Now those go off a little bit on the fast side, so the one last thing we would have to do, of course, is to think of speed for the frame. And my keyframe seems to have moved a little bit. Let's push it down there. So I would need some speed here, and I would want it to accelerate because it starts its movement while all 3 images are visible. So I'm panning, so animation speed, accelerate. One last look, and we really are finished at this point. All settle nicely on the screen. It would be nice to be able to put a nice thin line around them, and then they accelerate off the screen, ready for the next image in the sequence. Now I've just saved what I've created here, so you can import this into your version of Pictures2Exe and apply it to 3 3:2 portrait style images. Now the oval shape does make a pleasant change from the standard vertical format 3:2 portrait style image. But if we're going to go to the trouble of creating ovals, be they sharp-edged or soft, we do have to give quite a bit of thought to the content, and as I said before, this image wouldn't fit an oval shape very well because it's far too large in the frame. We need a lot of space around the subject to really do the oval justice. So if we're going to go to that trouble, why not just go a little further and create the ovals in Photoshop or Photoshop Elements. And here I've got a little example of something I produced earlier by creating the images and saving them as PNG files. So the outer edges of these images are transparent. And you may get a better view of these if I open it up full screen, and there you can see they do seem to have just a little more charm. I've got a drop shadow on each one, and of course I've allowed an overlap and a thin black line around the outer edge. And here I have another variation on exactly the same theme. But here I've just reduced the size of the images a little bit so that they all fit nicely as we created before. But again, when we view them full screen, we've got that lovely drop shadow and the thin line to make them stand out beautifully from the background.